This is Say It Loud. Buckle your seatbelts and get ready to immerse yourself in the complexities of our government. In 3, 2, 1, blast off.
Hello, welcome to the podcast Say It Loud about free speech and the Bill of Rights. Today we're talking about national security, and we have a guest from Amador Valley's ComCivics Unit 4 member, Harjaap Singh. Hello, Mr. Singh. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me on the show. It's really nice to be here.
Awesome. Great. Does anybody have a question for Mr. Singh?
Yes, Mr. Singh has a question for Mr. Singh. Harjaap, do you think that the government sometimes abridges the rights of individuals in the name of national security, even when it's not justified to do so?
Yeah, I think this has been happening. This has happened all throughout American history, but I think it's most problematic after 9/11, when the United States government passed the Patriot Act, which allowed for warrantless surveillance of American citizens in the name of national security. And also after 9/11, the Department of Homeland Security was created, which has other departments under it, like Immigration and Customs Enforcement and the Transportation Security Agency. I'd like to first start with the TSA. The TSA is meant to be airport secure. It essentially is airport security. They also do other things. They work with the Federal Railroad Administration to protect the American people against things like train robberies. Because the United States government transports a lot of sensitive materials over train. As the United States is very vast, it's difficult to transport these things over car or other via road. So agencies like the TSA do racially profile. I myself can attest to my own racial profiling by the TSA. For example, when I was flying to London, I was going to London to visit some family. I was given an explosive residue swab and I believe that is because I wear a turban. My father was swabbed. My mother, she wears a scarf because it was cold. She was swabbed. My sister does not wear a scarf. She was not swabbed. And I have been swabbed ever since 2018. I was born in 2007. Since I was 11 years old, I have been swabbed. I am a child traveling with a family. I'm a minor. I'm a United States citizen. I was born in the United States. My parents are United States citizens. Whenever I travel with them, whoever wears a turban is given the explosive residue swab. This is not. We don't see white civilians tested for gun residue. Why are civilians who wear turbans swabbed like this? This is the overreach that agencies like the Transportation Security Agency have committed. We also see with agencies
I have a question, Harjaap. Do you think that that's necessarily the fault of the government or the TSA itself, or just the agents who are racially profiling you? That's to say, what should the government do about it if they're doing random checks and the agents racially profile you? No matter what they do, the agents may be racially profiling you.
I would think before Harjaap says, I would think that if it's something that's happening consistently, that's not a feature or due to the agents themselves, and I would extrapolate that to the agency itself if that's something that's happening consistently. But Harjaap, share what you think.
Yeah, I'd absolutely like to agree with Leica here. If it was once in a while, because I used to agree with Art that it's hey, this is random. When I went to London, I realized that why was not if it was really random, all 4 of the members of my family would have been swabbed. Why were the 3 people who were wearing scarves whose hair was covered? Why were only they swabbed? Why were only they taken as a random check? That really changed my opinion on the matter, that I now fundamentally believe that this is unspoken policy by TSA administration. This doesn't come all the way from by the secretaries of Homeland Security. This comes from the inner civil service, who have created this culture of fear of Arabs, fear of those who wear turbans, fear of others in this country, that fear of these people that know you have to swab them because they might just be terrorists. Now, if we really want to be concerned, swab the white civilians for gun residue.
I have a question, Harjaap. Some people believe that these security measures were justified after 9/11, but not today. Do you believe that it was overbroad even then, or because it's extended to today?
Obviously, I don't think I can comment on that because I wasn't born. I was born in 2007. If we want to invite somebody who has experience pre 9/11 flying and post 9/11 flying, I think that's a much better question for somebody like that.
Well, I think that we've kind of talked about this on our last episode that like at the aftermath of 9/11, we've seen like multiple times throughout history that in times of crisis, such as 9/11, there has been extensive reach of government power. With like Lincoln, I believe Leighton mentioned last time, using like kind of getting rid of habeas corpus and stuff to deal with civil war. Now post 9/11 to implement things like the Patriot Act, which was the immediate reaction to the crisis. But I think we agreed last time that's not necessarily the proper way to continue such a method into the future. And so like Harjaap, like kind of one thing I want to ask you that I was thinking about is like obviously there are a lot of flaws with these agencies. Do you think like we need to like remove these agencies, or like do they bring some benefit to the American people?
I think these agencies do bring a small benefit, but not because they actually do their job. I'm talking about this first of all from the perspective of the TSA, as I have the most experience with them. But I believe that these agencies are essentially a deterrent, that it's like people don't even want to try. But who is bringing... Terrorists are not bringing water bottles onto planes.
Well, that's to test for like liquid chemicals, no? Not like the water themselves.
Yeah, they're essentially what the TSA is essentially doing is essentially making the process slower, making people feel that that real security is happening. I'm citing a statistic here. Almost 9 fake TSA officers came. Fake civilians who were actually TSA officers trying to test the effectiveness, they missed 95% of contraband that actually came through TSA. These are things like guns, knives, drugs. They actually missed them. So if TSA has actually been proven to not be effective, so what is TSA actually doing? Nothing. They're just harassing Arabs, people who look Arab, people who wear turbans and other stuff like that.
I think I disagree with your job. At the end of the day, what's the TSA supposed to do? It's supposed to a certain extent, protect our aviation, right? And whether it's actually catching these knives, guns, chemicals, as you say, or not, it's acting as a deterring factor. So it's, at the end of the day, stopping these attacks. So at the end of the day, the TSA is doing its job one way or another, isn't it?
Is it really, though? Because if the guns and knives are still coming on the plane, and Actually, Arv, I actually wanted to ask you a question.
Okay.
Do you know what the number one racial group that commits terrorism in this country is?
White people.
Thank you. It's white nationalists. If we really cared about terror in this country, we would be surveilling almost every. We would be stopping white people.
I think we're going off point right now. Like the point is like TSA is doing its job by acting as a deterring factor. So whether like, yeah, sure, we can say that the TSA agents are racially profiling you, which is true. I agree that the TSA agents are racially profiling you, but TSA is doing its job of keeping us safe whenever we fly, is it not?
But what I'm trying to say is that the real threat in this country is white nationalism. Arab terrorism falls all over.
Don't you think that like white nationalism is the primary issue because like Arab threats or like other international threats have been reduced and no longer factor because of the work of other agencies, where these agencies don't necessarily have the ability to regulate white terrorism, but TSA, for example, does have some authority to be able to deal with international matters of terrorism.
Sorry, what's your question?
Like, don't you think that like white nationalism is more prevalent because there's no real authority to deal with it? Like TSA can deal with Arab terrorism, especially when they're like flying over, right?
Well, TSA could very well stop white people with tattoos, bald. Why aren't TSA agents stopping all bald white people? What if they're part of Aryan gangs? I wear a turban in this country. I am stopped on the same basis of that I wear a turban. I could be part of Al Qaeda. Then the same thing could be applied to bald white people with tattoos, could be part of the Aryan Brotherhood.
Okay, so you're saying extending like these random checks essentially to anyone who could be considered a threat to this nation rather than just like singling out a certain ethnic group.
Absolutely, yes. If we really want it, I believe that not only TSA needs new training, they need new training. They have not properly been trained to stop to actually find real terror threats. They're only racially profiling Arabs when the real threat in this country is white nationalism and white terror.
Okay, let's move on from like TSA then to like recently Customs and Borders Protection and ICE, right? This is another organization, as you mentioned at the beginning, that was created under Homeland Security to be able to protect like kind of like the American public, right? Do you think like organizations like separating from your personal experiences, which you have a lot of with TSA, that these organizations like ICE and Customs Borders is is not correctly, but is doing its job at protecting the American public.
And to add on to that, like right now, the government's using like its emergency powers for like quote unquote the war on border, because there's a war like, happening on the borders and illegal immigrants coming over. Do you think that's justified to use emergency powers for that?
I don't believe so. And let me ask you a question now. Who commits the most crime in this country? Like on immigration status, on a per capita scale? It's U.S. citizens.
Well, that's because there's more of them.
That's why I said per capita.
Okay.
You are more likely to be a victim of a crime committed by a United States citizen than you are an illegal immigrant, and even less an illegal immigrant. You are most safe around an illegal immigrant, and that is a fact. That is what the data shows. And U.S. ICE and U.S. Customs and Border Patrol, they are essentially coming into neighborhoods like that. They're stopping people. They're stopping Latino people. They're local police are pulling over people who look out of place, which is very well a dog whistle for Latino people, people from Latin America. So, no, I believe that ICE is not ICE and Border Patrol. They are not doing what is actually. They are not actually just trying to keep people safe. Because if they're trying to keep people safe, they'd be actually trying to get the real criminals rather than people who commit speeding violations.
So, like, are we supposed to remove borders protections and just let all the legal immigrants that want to come in?
I don't believe so. No, I think that we need to limit the amount of illegal immigrants that come in.
Now, how are we supposed to do that without?
I think we do that by foreign aid. I think the main reason a lot of people come to this country is because their countries are so messed up, and that's because of American imperial rule. Let's look at Chile. Chile had a horrible dictatorship by Augustus Pinochet. The United States government supported that dictatorship, and that is an undeniable fact. And there's a reason why there was a Chilean refugee crisis. Now, if we actually try and give foreign aid to help stabilize that country, maybe we wouldn't have a refugee crisis like that. Now, I want to turn it over to Shaurya now. I think I've said enough.
To introduce Shaurya, he's another member of Amador Valley Comp Civics Unit 4. Hello, Shaurya Srivastava.
Hello. I just had a question for Harjaap. We've been having a very interesting conversation, and he's been talking about immigration and refugees. So I had a question. Under the Trump administration, you've seen the decline of refugees coming to America, right? You've seen Trump cracking down on refugees, but you also saw how white refugees from South Africa, there's recent news about white South Africans are allowed to be refugees to come to the U.S. So does that point to a deeper problem? Is it just about refugees, or is it about certain demographics being favored? What do you think the reason is for deportation? What's the deeper reason for all this?
I think that President Trump is bringing a lot of these white South Africans in, and I believe that's because of the influence of his special advisor, Elon Musk. As Elon Musk is a white South African, I believe that this is just the influence. However, I don't believe that. I'm not going to come here and say that, white South Africans aren't facing oppression. I believe that they should be given a fair hearing just like everybody else. I do believe it is a moral stain on this country that we are not that we have stopped allowing refugees from all over the world to come in. Normally, the Congress allows the president to bring in 125,000 refugees a year. There are millions of people suffering in humanitarian crises, like in the Gaza Strip, in Yemen, in other places around the world, that are in places like the Eastern Congo, in Sudan, that are dealing with horrible, horrible crises. And I think it's a moral stain on our country. In my opinion, I think everybody should be given a fair shot at getting a refugee hearing.
No, I mean, I understand your point. You make a great point, Harjaap. But I was thinking more along racial lines, right? We've seen how refugees of other racial groups have specifically been targeted. You've been like, no, stop refugees from all these other, for example, like South American nations. We've stopped refugee status of those people, but we're seeing specifically white South Africans, and we're also could this be because of the influence of the Great Replacement theory? That's a theory that's like been perpetuated in right-wing media, far-right influencers. Could this be because of that influence, not just Elon Musk?
First of all, I'd like to say the Great Replacement theory is a fundamentally incorrect ideology.
Why don't you explain what the Great Replacement theory is?
Well, Shar is the one who brought it up. I'd like to hear him give his definition.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, I've heard that, it's about the white population decreasing, and obviously that has been sort of a trend where the percentage of white people in America has decreased over time. And some people are saying that this, people who are like racist and obviously have been peddling these theories of like, oh no, if the white population is getting replaced in America, and now these minority groups are coming in and taking over, whatever. So that's sort of what I know about the Great Replacement theory. So what's your thoughts on that? And could allowing South African white refugees point to sort of this peddling towards the Great Replacement, people who like believe in this Great Replacement?
Look, I don't believe that the Great Replacement theory is incredibly large in the United States. I think that it's a much smaller thing. I believe in Europe right now, it is running rampant by
Absolutely.
a lot of leaders like Hungarian leader Viktor Orban, the Kalin Georgescu, who was going to be who was running in the recent Romanian election. He was barred by running due to Russian influence in the second iteration after the Romanian High Court. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, a far right leader, Le Pen, who has peddled theories like this. Nigel Farage, Reform UK leader. This is not, in my opinion, I don't believe that this ideology is very prevalent in the United States. I think this is a far more of a European problem of the Great Replacement theory, of it being peddled. Thank you.
Okay, and then moving on to detainment by the American government. For example, like Guantanamo Bay. Like, would you like to share your thoughts on that, especially as you see, with recent
recently, we have people have been sent to El Salvador, for example, as a form of detainment.
Yeah, I think that the deportations of people without due process to places like El Salvador, it's chilling that these people do not have the same rights, because in the United States, even if you are a convicted criminal, you still have the right to claim. If you are being tried for another crime, you still have the rights of habeas corpus. You still have the right to consult with a lawyer. You still have the right to not incriminate yourself. But once you are removed from the United States, like it was done after 9/11, when enemy combatants, people who are classified as enemy combatants, were brought to Guantanamo Bay to deny them their civil rights, so that the United States government, CIA officers, naval officers could torture detainees, to deny them their civil rights. The same thing could very well be happening in El Salvador. We just don't know. In Guantanamo Bay, we still had a fundamental control over what happens there. When we send people like Kilmar Abrego Garcia to El Salvador, we don't have control over that. President Bukele of El Salvador has that control. So I believe that is absolutely wrong. We cannot allow this to continue. And I believe that people who are detained, if you allegedly commit a crime in this country, you should not be able to be removed from this country. And if we want to have that conversation, you shouldn't be able to be removed from your own state.
Well, speaking of kind of crime convictions without due process, what do you think about people outside of the country? For example, Obama's drone strikes and the eventual death of Osama bin Laden. He's a criminal outside of the U.S. that's committed crimes against the U.S., but was not necessarily brought back to the U.S. to have the due process there and punishment for his crimes. What do you think of that?
I think that the drone strikes are something that I have personally disagree with. I think that even though it risks American lives, I believe that as a global superpower, we have a duty to protect the citizens, not only of the United States, but citizens of the world. We're all human beings. At the end of the day, we're all human beings, and I believe that the collateral damage that is caused by drone strikes is horrifying. We can see how in places like Gaza, in places like Yemen, where drone strikes are used, we can see kids come without limbs. So many kids do not are gonna grow up without a leg, without an arm, without an ear. They're gonna come. They might not be able to see for the rest of their lives. And I think that things like drone strikes they cause so much collateral damage. I think it's in our best interest that, because we have the greatest fighting force in the world, if the terror threat is really that serious, we should be sending SEAL teams in to bring these people back to the United States to get justice. And if that is not possible, our main goal should be to bring them back to the United States to get justice for the American people who are their victims. But if they are not able to, yes, I do believe it is right for SEAL teams to kill these people if it is in defense, if it is in self-defense.
I want to go over like one last thing, Harjaap. Like previously, you said that the best way to deal with the refugee crisis is for the U.S. to give foreign aid to all these nations. Number one, I don't think that's really possible for the U.S. to give foreign aid to so many nations. And number two, even if we did give foreign aid to all these nations, what would stop us from becoming an imperial power? If we're giving so much money, if we're putting so much money into a country, we will inherently have so much power in that country.
We already do that through military power, though. I believe that rather through military power, putting naval bases, putting military bases in these countries, I believe what's smarter and how we failed in nation building I'm gonna divert from the point a little bit, is that we tried to nation build in Iraq. It fundamentally failed because we were trying to impose a Western democratic system by military. We have to allow these people to create their own system. We have to allow them self-determination, not the determination we give for them. We have to allow them to create their own system, and I don't believe that the military influence is the right way. I believe that foreign aid, even though it's the same kind of influence, I believe that foreign aid is a better kind of influence.
Right, so wait, one more thing, Harjaap. So there's a lot, after the Taliban took over Afghanistan, for example, a lot of refugees fled from Afghanistan, obviously. So, but you're saying that the U.S. really just allow countries to develop their own government and should not really meddle with it by trying to create a democratic system when the country clearly doesn't want it. So then what should the U.S. do about Afghanistan?
I believe that we should be allowing, for example, in Afghanistan, there is a cultural and historical way of governance, that it's not a full country, that it's not a national government where small villages and districts, maybe at the county, for example, for us, like a county level is really the highest level of governance that really could work, is that there is not enough infrastructure, that not everybody, almost the percentage of people who have internet in Afghanistan, the percentage of people who have other basic services like this, who have running water, are so low. It doesn't make sense for us to impose a large national government onto them when they already have small systems of cultural councils and religious councils that can govern their own people, where it's close to the people, rather than a national government that really has never been proven to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Harjaap, and Shaurya as well from Unit 4 for taking the time to be here today and being really passionate and also candid about sharing your experiences and thoughts on national security. I think this topic is very relevant today with all the changes that are happening in administration in our nation today. So thank you.
Thanks for listening. That was Say It Loud with Arav, Maria, Leka, Arkith, and Danush.